in my case, I grew up in a family of classical musicians, and then my sister brought in a record of the Beatles, and I just loved the sound of the electric guitar, and I got interested in contemporary composed music, and so I remember writing my first CV for a gig when I was 17. I just arrived in Amsterdam, and I wrote down Wiek Hijmans thinks it is his mission to integrate the electric guitar in the classical music. And I had forgotten about that CV, but like 20 years after I found it, and I thought I was just, you know, telling myself like, yeah, this is what I've always wanted and blah, 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 but maybe it's not true, but I think it was true. I was really fascinated by the electric guitar becoming part of the classical music.
Well, I have a different story. I actually received my training as a classical guitarist. I mean, I had flirted a bit during my rebellious teenage years with electric guitar, but I really, from a very early age, began with acoustic guitar and then studying classical guitar, and it wasn't until much later, that is, I was already well into my 20s and in graduate school, when the world-renowned Dutch composer Louis Andriessen, who was in residence that semester at the university at which I was studying, and he said, I want you to play at the end of the semester, we're doing the style, so you should play this. And I said, Louis, I haven't played electric guitar in 13 or 14 years. He said, don't worry about it.
Because you chose the electric classical guitar, so to speak, the fact is that the time span of your music is quite narrow. It's like the last 50 years or so, which means you have to commission lots of works. Is it difficult to always play new music, like compared to a violinist who can play 20 concertos for 40 years?
Yeah, and you know, it has its plus and negative sides, but I think Wiek and I are definitely on the same page and on the same wavelength in terms of our commission to move this thing forward and to make a significant contribution in new art music with our instruments. You know, it's kind of an honor to be mentioned as part of this wave of players. I mean, Wiek and I have been on this planet a couple of decades now, but who are really, you know, setting the stage in a way for the electric guitar in new art music.
If anything, I'm so incredibly grateful and delighted that I was in the position to commission this very piece that we play. We made a festival dedicated to electric guitar and classical music for the first time in 2004 in Amsterdam, and then the radio people. At that time, the radio still had some money, and they said in Holland, you know, maybe about all the budget cuts there, but anyway, at that time they still had some money, and they said, we liked your programming so much, here's a bag of money, you can commission a couple of compositions for electric guitar with orchestra. And then I immediately had to think of Tristan Murail, because one of the most famous electric guitar solo pieces is a piece by Tristan. And so that's we started to talk about it. I started talking to Seth. We went to Tristan. He wrote the piece. Piece was received very well. He won a prize, I think, with it in France, like best composition of the year. And so we got to play it with a bunch of orchestras all over Europe. And if that's the only thing I've done contributing in my musical life, that's already a big honor, because this piece, I think, blends the electric guitar in a way with the orchestra as that's never done before or after, actually. Yeah, so that's very special.
Are the contemporary composers aware of the possibilities of your instrument, or do you have to teach them about?
I think we both did our share. Mine is a little longer. I started in like 2000, whatever, 4 or 5 or something. I wrote a little instrumentation guide for composers, because I was telling the same story over and over again to all these composers that were writing pieces, and so I thought, well, I might as well write it down and give them a head start, and then they will still come with questions, but they come with educated questions. And then, you know, later on, but you have to tell about it. Very recently, you have made this masterpiece standard work for the whole guitar thing, which just recently came out last year, I guess.
Yeah, 2 years.
2 years ago, yeah.
Actually, the acoustic guitar is in the focus, but I mean, there are shared properties and shared elements of both instruments. But yeah, I mean, in my experience, what has happened now is I've started to see a pattern, and the composers are falling into 2 camps. The one camp of composers has had experience with the electric guitar. Many of them played in rock bands as kids. A few of them are really very accomplished improvisers. They know the instrument very, very well. They write extremely idiomatically for it. And then I've met a group, they have no experience with the instrument at all, and they're starting to use the electric guitar. They're not interested in sort of the physicality of playing, the sort of embodiment, all the gestural thing, the whole, you know, hypersexual association that the electric guitar has and will never actually get rid of. They're using the electric guitar as a sound source, as a vehicle which can produce really innovative and compelling new timbres and textures. Often the instrument will be lying on a table, or it'll be lying on our laps, and we'll have a whole array of devices, whether it be analog or digital, or you know, patches programmed in a computer, and
it's just a beautiful interface.
Yeah, yeah.
I think we're lucky to live. I mean, at least as guitarists, we're lucky to live at this time and age. Yeah.
About this week's piece, you play as a duo. What kind of a challenge is it?
Well, I mean, we play with the orchestra.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so there's. But you're right. We're also a duo. We have to sort of make a sound together. In some parts of the piece, it can be more individualistic, and in other parts, it's really we're a little duo indeed. But often we need to blend more with a percussionist or a wind instrument than with each other. You know, so it's really with the orchestra. But we've played a whole bit together. We had this guitar quartet with which we traveled and did a whole program. So we've known each other for a long time, and we know where we are. I mean, I know where he will be, and he, you know, in terms of like micro timing, interpretation, sound. It's like he's my brother now, you know, in that sense. That's